So we talked about 4 different archetypes of innovation. Yeah, in certain types of innovation, China is doing well. Others still room to catch up. What does that mean, right? So across these different types of innovation, right? So China has strength, right? And in our view, right? So if we say just one sentence, right? So in our view, China can become a cheaper, faster, and globally connected innovation platform, not just for China or not just for Chinese companies, but for the world, right? Including many multinational companies around the world, right? So it is up to you, right? So how to use the strength of Chinese innovation system, right? And that is that's our view and message, right? And then in fact, right, especially in the space of digital, right? So China is already making an impact on the global landscape, right? So for example, if you look at the e-commerce, right? So China accounts for 40% of global e-commerce transaction, right? If you look at the mobile payment, Chinese third-party mobile payment is 11 times larger than that of the United States, right? And if you look at the global unicorns, right? So China is a home of the 1/3 of the global unicorns, right? And now they start going global, right? And anyone from Australia or London, right? So yeah, so bicycle sharing models are actually going global. And I was in Sydney a few weeks back, and I saw this yellow bicycle in Sydney, right? And we have people from Korea, right? There's an internet bank in Korea, right? And the fraud detection system, right, used by Chinese mobile payments, the company is actually adopted by the Korean internet bank. Anyone from India? Yeah, okay. So there's a famous news aggregation app in China, right? The algorithm also is used by the Indian, the similar Indian, news aggregation solution, right? And anyone from Thailand? No? Okay, so I went to Bangkok last month, right? And I went to and when I arrived my hotel, it was about 10 p.m., right? And I was very hungry, right? And luckily I found a convenience store, 7-Eleven, right? And I went there and bought some instant noodles, right? I was very happy, right? And when I went to the cashier, and because I didn't have the cash, right? I tried to use my credit card, and then they rejected to take my credit card, and then told me, oh, you didn't meet the minimum threshold, right? You need to buy more, right? But I didn't want to buy more, right? And magically, I saw the sign of Alipay. And can I use Alipay? And they happily accepted Alipay, right? So these Chinese models are going global, right? And then it is actually making a real impact, right, around the world. And then there will be more and more cases like this going forward, right, coming out of China, right? And also at the same time, China is a global investor, right? It's a big investor, right? So if you look at all those cool technology, right? So China shows up as top 1, 2, or 3 innovators in those technologies, right? So when you go back to your home countries and try to do something, right? So you may meet some investors from China, right? In those spaces, right? Yeah. And we also interact with the policy makers, right? And what they should do to promote more innovation in China. And some principles we highlight, for example, let markets work, right? It needs to be more market driven, right? And I think we also discussed this before, right? So the reason bicycle sharing became popular was partly driven by the vacuum of regulation, right? And then if you look at the example of mobile payment, so we see the similar case, right? So in the beginning, right? So these companies, do something, right? So they do something, right? So in order to address the customer needs, they introduce, new services, right? New products and so on, right? And then, and governments observe, right? And then when it becomes big, government, steps in and try to put the regulatory framework, right? And especially in consumer-related digital space, there was lots of encouragement of this entrepreneur spirit, right? And that helped, Chinese innovators to experiment, right? And then, grow big, right? So the similar principles, can be applied, right? So to, other types of innovation, right? So especially, consumer related, right? And then, in case of the companies, right? So one, message we highlight is, making a big bet, right? So in the space of innovation and digital, the pace of change is very fast, right? So therefore, bold strategy will give you a bigger payoff, right? And then especially in China, right? The pace of change is very, very fast, right? So the economic growth is a lot faster than the other, major economies, right? So that means for companies, there could be, bigger upside potential, right? So if you take, bold action, and capture these opportunities. And at the same time, the downside risk can be bigger, right? So the risk of, being left behind is bigger, right? Because other companies can move faster and go after these opportunities, right? And the similar principle can be applied to you, right? As an individual, right? So there could be, more and more interesting opportunities for you to grow in China, right? So by going after those innovation opportunities, right? So and therefore, if you take, bold action and bold move, right? There could be opportunities to be, successful, right? As an entrepreneur, right? So hopefully, that can be an inspiration to you. And then, when you become a billionaire, at some point, don't forget this class. Yeah.